Right, so as I'm understanding the question from Commissioner D'Amelio, maybe I'm not understanding it correctly, but I think what Mr. D'Amelio is saying to me is that the item as it's described in number 8, is that number 8?
Number 1.
It's option 1.
But he means agenda
Oh, I'm
item number
sorry.
8.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, is what Commissioner Holmes proposed different than what is contained under that agenda item? Because for things to be voted on, they should appear on the agenda. And if they're not on the agenda, then they should be brought up, and the board should discuss whether they should be allowed on the agenda. So if this is beyond the scope of what's contemplated in number 8 on the agenda, then I think, to be safe, you should have a vote to say, okay, we're adding this.
Right.
Is that okay with everyone? And if it is, then we vote on it. If not, then, then another motion could be made or whatever needs to be done. As I said to you, number 8 is pretty broad because as we've heard before, people are bringing up different, different additions and deletions to each option. So, it's a difficult question to say yes or no. I think to be safe, you say, well, if this is something new, let's say we're all going to vote on this as well and add this to the agenda.
Mr. President, I think last week we were pretty explicit that after we talked about how we were going to proceed today, and what we all understood was we'd all heard, we'd all seen these written options. Even last week, we were addressing these options and spotting things within these options that we didn't think were necessarily correct. We're trying to deal with 3B. And what we told the public very clearly was that we were going to come here, and we were basically going to be trying to establish, through a majority of this board, the policy that this board was going to use to go forward on the construction of up to these 3 buildings. So the idea that I now have a motion before the board for the board to consider a commitment we make to the library being outside of the scope of what we've been talking about for 9 months, I think just isn't a concern.
Correct. I think that we're okay with this, with number 8.
Yeah.
We're fine with number 8.
And I think as Mr. Heilman, brought up the issue of isn't what I'm doing close to a slight change to Scheme 1 if it includes the construction of the new administration building and the construction of the new police station and a renovated library.
That's what it is.
I will amend my resolution to be to move this board to adopt a variation of Scheme 1 if people feel that is a more
It's an apples and apples
fits
compared
more with what we've been
with
discussing
3B.
than what I just did right now. I repeat what Mrs. Hall said, which is the library is extremely important to me and to a number of us on this board, who felt that it should not come second or third. I thought it should come first, but it could certainly tie for first with the other two,
Right.
with the other 2 buildings.
No, I think
And
that
Quite
makes
frankly,
sense.
I-
That makes sense.
Yeah, and so if Scheme 1 does that, then I will amend my motion and instead recraft it as a motion that we adopt a variation of Scheme 1.
Excuse me, but you have to correct the dollar figure too.
You have to
to
correct the dollar figure.
I'm going to
23.6.
say it. I'm just going to say what the dollar figure is. Yeah, I mean, ultimately the record is going to be what we say tonight. It
It's
isn't going to be what's written down
23.6.
here.
6, yeah.
23.6, not 23.4.
So my idea would be that we adopt a variation of Scheme 1. That Scheme 1 contemplates a township administration building and a police station built at the Darby and Manoa site. And the variation would be that the township makes the commitment of $5 million toward the renovation or new construction of the library, and directs the township personnel to investigate the options for different sites for constructing the library, including this site right here, the township site. And it makes the immediate $500,000 commitment to the library in order to release the $500,000 Keystone Grant funds.
The only other thing I'd like to add to that is that the library will not be built at Darby Manoa.
Right,
If we
and I
decide-
did say
Okay.
that. I did say that.
That is
I absolutely said that.
ruled out.
Okay.
The library is not to be constructed at Darby and Manoa.
Yeah, my thing, the library is a very important community asset.
Before you say that.
I get that,
if
oh, hang on.
If
Okay.
that is correct, does that need to be seconded? I mean, do you people agree?
Jane,
Jane originally seconded.
Jane, do you second the changes?
Are they written down? They
Yeah,
documented?
yeah.
You got them, Larry?
Yes.
Because there was a
on
lot
tape.
going on. That's right, it's on tape. Okay, so let's,
On disc,
so we're
actually.
doing
5
5.5
million.
million.
It's not limited to renovation. It includes new construction.
Right.
It rules out Darby and Minoa as a site for the library.
Right,
And it adds $500,000 commitment
For the
right
Keystone
now to
grant.
the library in order to get the Keystone grant.
Okay.
So the total cost of that would be?
Would be 23.6 million.
No, it wouldn't.
No,
no.
it wouldn't, it would be more than that.
No, it wouldn't. It'd be 24.
150, 1,500,000.
No, it wouldn't be 28 million.
Twenty-
No, the
24
5 million's
million.
already
It's-
in there.
No,
The only addition to
No.
that
No,
number.
three,
No, it's 24.
3.9 is in there.
It's
3.9 is in there, so you
Mario,
need,
24,
24,650.
24,650.
24,650,000.
I agree. That's the number. It's 24
That's what we need
million.
to do. We need to make sure that that figure's correct, and it's
Yeah, that's-
24,650,000.
Now, understand, all these numbers are estimates, folks. Nobody's borrowing money tonight.
No,
Yeah.
Mario, again, this isn't the procedure that we were going to follow tonight, but...
I'm sorry,
but
I think I had the floor. I
Hold
do
on a second.
think,
This is the procedure we said we were going to follow. This is scheme one. We're going to vote on a modified scheme one. That is, if you want to bring up,
I want to bring up option 3.
you
Okay,
can.
so the people out here know what we're talking about it.
He made the first motion. All right, please.
Thank you, sir.
Please.
Thank you, John.
All right, calm down, please.
This is all.
Go ahead.
I would just like to say that I'd like to comment on, if we could revise schematic one, I think that fits. And if we could make that into an option for voting tonight, that's what we should proceed to do. I
Okay.
believe Commissioner Holmes, you have that motion on the floor to change that. Is that what the motion is?
I've agreed. I have
Okay.
agreed to amend my motion now to be
Okay.
I move we adopt a variation of option one.
Option one,
And that
correct.
variation now goes from 3.95 million to 5 million
Right.
committed to library
To the
renovations
or
or the construction
recon-
of a new library.
Okay.
And it adds $500,000 immediately to the library for the library to be able to match with the Keystone grant.
Okay.
which could also bring that number down. if we get
And
the
even though
Keystone
I
grant.
think it's implicit in this, it rules out construction of a library at Darby and Minoa.
Okay, and I do think it's important to point out to the public that these numbers can change, and that it's important and falls upon this board to get the correct and best possible numbers from the best possible professionals, so that we don't, number one, overrun, but try to keep it within our budget and maybe possibly endeavor to do better, which is always what we want to do. And we may go out and find out that we don't need everything that we think we need at this moment, and that does happen. So please keep that in mind. But this is, I am agreeable to that. I think it would be
I
good.
just so,
Second, my amended motion.
Yes, you,
I do second it
okay, that's what I didn't want to get lost in the
I have
process.
a
after
question.
my speech.
so we had a
Question.
second. Can we have
Yeah, you can
discussion
have
on that
discussion.
motion?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, my advice.
Amy, can I ask you a
is can
question?
on that. Yeah.
What's the
He
tax
said, can we have?
mills on
yeah,
that?
sure. Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, you have the floor.
I'm just asking Amy what would it be. It's only $1,650,000 more, but what would it be? About approximate.
Yeah, please.
Approximately. I know putting it,
To add another $1 million,
it's $1.5 million, I guess more.
it would be minuscule.
$1,450,000.
$1.450.
In the annual debt service, it would be very minute.
But what is it? Though?
I don't know, I'd be guessing. No, I'm not going to guess with dollars, but it would be very minor.
Okay, but what
If
is
20,
it?
if to borrow 20 million, it would be a $64 increase, then 1 million more.
20 million, 64.
20 into that.
$64 a month.
20
into
into
So it's
64.
probably about 65, right?
Yeah, so $1 more.
Okay, that's all I want. So $65 more a month.
No, a year.
A year, I'm sorry, a year.
Thank you.
Mr. President,
Commissioner
is
Connell.
it, quick question here, is it possible, am I, with the understanding, there's two things possibly on the board here, Scheme 1 and Scheme 3B.
Right.
I mean, is it possible just to say, look, go down and whatever, between Scheme 1 and 3B? I mean, at least,
If you want to do that?
Would you?
if you have, you know, if if Scheme 1 gets the fifth vote, it's kind of like we never even gave 3B a chance.
Okay. Okay, so
Oh, Jimmy, what do you
would you
feel
be
about that?
amenable?
Well,
I, if you want, Jimmy, I'll recommend.
yeah,
I'll
just,
amend my motion to
I just
be-
want the people out here to know what 3B is. Let me at least read it.
You can
Then-
read 3B.
Okay.
Okay, Jim,
for it.
hold on one
Wait,
second.
no,
Let him
wait, hang
amend.
on. You gotta
Let him
vote.
amend, and then you
I
can,
don't have
you
to.
can
He
speak.
can read the motion.
Okay.
He can read
You want-
3B.
This
anytime he
amendment
wants.
allows you to give Scheme A and 3B
Correct.
to everybody.
There's no
So when-
amendment yet.
when-
He wants to read 3B, so read it.
Hold on a second. Let's get this straight before we go through the reading. This will allow us, when we vote, we will be voting for either a modified Scheme 1 or
Okay.
Scheme 3B.
Okay.
And he is going to read 3B now.
You
Right.
don't have that amendment yet, though, you know? I mean, it's talked about, but we don't have that
Right, we
amendment.
haven't made that
let him
amendment
s-
yet.
He
Let
can
him-
speak first,
let him
because
speak,
there's a
and
second
then-
on the other motion, so he
Right.
can still
Go ahead.
speak. Yeah.
All right, a new right-sized 22,000 square foot police station. New generous 3,000 conference meeting center. The existing one, this one is 1,000. A renovated library building with new Mill Road parking lane, adding 7 spaces. Renovated administration building, including moving the recreation department. District court offices built in the vacated Glendale property, and I understand what you're going to say in a minute. 2 recycling centers, one at Manila, one at Glendale. All right, what could option 3B cost? 9.5 to 10.5 police building, 600,000, 800,000 on the conference meeting room. 5.5 million to 6 million on a renovated library and new parking. 400,000 to 600,000 on renovated administration with recreation department. 500,000 to 700,000 on district court at renovated Glendale property. Minimal on the upgrade recycling centers at Manoa and Glendale. Why should we consider both for option 3B? Far lower and more manageable capital cost, 1/3 less tax increase. Independent project timelines for each element. Library can start now, police can take 2 to 3 years, administration can take 1 to 2 years. Library becomes state-of-the-art, modern facility, parking increase 50%. Reusing library building conserves resources, no white elephant to sell. This is very important. Library stays in a better, more acceptable neighborhood location. That is very important to my neighbors by the library and all the kids at the middle school and high school. Stadium Manila Road site is not overburdened with too much traffic and cars. Additional parking and play space can be given to the existing ball fields. The district courts can reside in a town-owned building rather than rent, saving the town about $50,000 a year. 2 full recycling centers can better serve various town areas. That's option 3B.
President?
Go ahead.
Mr. President, I will amend my motion in the following manner. I will ask the board to vote for one of 2 options. The first option is the modified option 1, which I have already described and everybody understands its ingredients, or option 3B, as has just been described by Commissioner McGarity.
Or no.
Or you can vote to neither.
Yeah, because option 3B has got things in it that I just can't, it would have to be modified at the, well, I mean, we talked about it in the work session, so we know that the
District court.
district
things like
court
that. We
doesn't
don't know.
go,
We don't know.
doesn't go there.
Mr. Bogosian presented a revised option last week,
Yeah, that's here.
and his revised option is the one that's attached to Dr. Levin's document,
Oh, okay.
not the
'Cause
one
I've
that
got
Jim
the
just
one
read.
Yeah, Jim, you want to
Jimmy gave
read?
us. because he just read the old one. Commissioner McGarity just read the old one.
Well, it's basically the same.
Yeah, I know it's a.
Well,
but
I would-
it takes the district court out.
Okay.
And the major difference is the real decision between the two proposals, as I understand it, is one is a new administration building with the police department
Yes.
versus renovating this site. That's the major difference. And I would tell you that, Mr. McGarity, that if you modified that, there's several modifications in Mr. Bogosian's thing that there's $1 million for a conference meeting center. There's $850,000 for renovating this site, which, based upon the mold, the water problems and everything, I would be more comfortable taking the $1 million out of the conference room over there. We have the C-Rec, we have other buildings we could have this meeting in, and allocating that to make that $1.8 million for the renovation here, as opposed to there, and increasing the size of the building. I prefer to see a 23 to 24,000 square foot police building as opposed to a 22,000 modified. But the difference is probably going to be about $5 million towards the bond issue to use the renovated building in 3B. So, but I don't think
But mine's still around the 18 million, am I correct?
the pricing is the same. It's just the allocation of your dollars. I don't believe that, and we discussed it at the work session, that renovating this site could be done. It was wrong in the original proposal. The guess was about $400,000. We all agree that that was way too low based upon even putting a new roof on the church down at St. Andrews. But 1.8 is close to about the 2 million estimate that we've heard. So if you're going to compare the two things, either a new building or renovating, then the dollars, I think, should be allocated correctly, or at least we present them correctly. So you can go either way. That's all I want to point out.
Commissioner Wexler, there is one other distinct difference, and that is this: the renovation that 3B rules out the library at this site. So one of the considerations in the modified scheme 1 is that if the library builds on a new location as opposed to its current location, one of its options could be this site, which is out of the question in 3B.
I agree, but based upon our costs for the recreation center and the police department, $5.5 million is going to buy you a new building anywhere. So I don't really see that as an issue. I think if
Yeah,
we're
I'm not
allocating
debating.
$5.5 million for the library, which I totally agree with,
Yeah.
then you're talking a renovation of the existing building, based on those dollars.
Well, but again, what I said earlier was that getting $5 million, making a commitment to the township for $5 million for the library, hopefully does what the library wasn't able to do about 8 years ago when they went out there and said it's time to build a new library, and they turned around and looked for their biggest benefactor, the township, and the township wasn't within a mile of them. So a $5 million commitment from us right now may unlock for them a lot of potential donors who make the total amount of funds available for construction of a library significantly higher than the $5 million we're talking about.
Right, but based upon their fundraising capability and having, I think that we're going to be 95% of that construction cost.
Well,
Based
this
upon-
is the first time
Right.
that this
I
many
agree.
people have had this many nice things to say about the library in a long time. So I actually feel like the library is going to have much more energy and much greater convincing and greater advocacy now with their donors, now that they've got a township fully behind them, and not a township that that their donors may be suspicious of. They're, of course, suspicious of nothing, but the donors might wonder whether or not the relationship is as strong as they portray. Tonight's meeting and how the board acts would certainly allay any of those concerns.
No, I agree, and Larry, having been involved in fundraising for private high schools and universities, unless you have $2 or $3 million donors, the library in today's environment is not going to be able to raise. You know how many $25 donations it takes to raise $1 million? It is
Yeah,
a
it
lot
takes-
of money. It's in today
thousands.
with a quasi-government building, fundraising for a government building is almost impossible. It's a very daunting challenge based upon how many calls you get from your university, your law school, your high schools, our kids' schools. They're competing for dollars that are already allocated from a
Which is
from a
another
charitable-
reason why, Commissioner Wexler, I thought it important to separate the library from the police and from the municipal building and be a standalone library, because people don't think of the library as a municipal building. They think of it as an education center, as a community center, they think of it a place for donated dollars. They wouldn't think of it that same way if they're sharing an entrance with guys doing the perp walk. So I think that the steps we're taking here significantly increase their likelihood of success in the fundraising. But I do appreciate your experience.
But it does affirm that it is a government building when you give them
What?
it does affirm that it is a government building when we put $5.5 million towards a
Well,
renovation or construction.
It's a strong government commitment for us to make our township better.
But I would, Mr. McGarity, you're asking me a question on the side. If you would reallocate the $1 million for the conference meeting center and add it to the $850,000 that Mr. Bogosian does, that gives us 1.85 for renovation of this site. And I'd like to keep, within the money, I'd like to keep the police station at 24,000 square feet as opposed to reducing it to 22,000. But at that site, and then that does, as Mr. Holmes correctly points out, that limits us to renovating the library, I believe, based upon the dollar amounts. But if I see a commitment from this board of $5.5 million to renovating the library, and it keeps it in the current location, I think I would strongly support that. So.
Okay, I accept your change.
Commissioner Wexler, my only thought on that is that I would hate to see us limit the library to staying in that spot when other options could be available. And I'm happy to put a time limit, and
That's fine.
I just feel like, I just hate to, we've come so far that I don't want to limit them by saying you have to stay on Mill Road. I feel like we should give them an opportunity, and if the board wants to put a time limit on that, I can
Want
support
to take
that.
3 months or a quarter to evaluate?
I just
Sites I
would,
can live with that because
I
there's
would just ask
just not
that.
that many sites available. Though.
Right, and I think they deserve that chance, and I think the community deserves that chance. And maybe we come back to, that we are on Mill Road and that we have to, I don't know what we'll ever do with parking, but I would ask that we take Commissioner Holmes, and if you want to put a time limit on that so that we have more options than Mill Road, then maybe that's a healthy compromise.
I'm okay with that. I mean, let me just kind of explain logically how this works out. If the majority of this board adopts Scheme 1, Option 1, understand that we're then making the commitment to building the township site. So we immediately we're building a new township building at Darby and Manoa. We immediately have this site,
Right.
which can be, I would hope, quickly evaluated as a potential site for a library. I mean, I would ask, if one of the things we do in Scheme is Option 1, then I would direct the township personnel and the professionals that we have employed to first and foremost immediately evaluate this site for its efficacy as a library, as a modern library. Consider the parking, consider ingress and egress. At the same time, if that becomes not possible, they should be perhaps even double tracking this, evaluating other sites in the township, and also considering the value of the township building for purposes of dealing with the school district and possibly coming up with a different scenario.
Okay. So
I'd agree to 6 months to put that whole period of find a location. I think 3 months at the end of 2014 is a mistake. I think that's too. I don't
Okay.
want to commit to something that short.
6 months starting in January 2015?
No, I do.
We're doing
I
right
do.
now?
By March 31, 2015, I'd like the township personnel to come back to us, tell us whether or not this site here on this location is possible for a library, and to evaluate the ability of the renovations, evaluate the decency of the value
Okay.
of the renovations.
I just want to make clear, if you vote for 3B, Jim, you're going to change that, right?
He accepted what?
You accepted the changes that Bill?
Didn't
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we could do the evaluation much quicker. We just went through as a board and opposed the zoning board's decision to put a Walgreens at that intersection, which we're 100 feet from because of traffic concerns. To put the busiest library in Delaware County within 100 feet of that intersection just doesn't make sense, Larry.
Yeah, but with 40 sites,
I agree.
we do not know that. Nobody has looked at this site. We have no idea how much parking can happen here. We can open the area and have ingress and egress on the
I know.
Darby
Well, I
cutoff
know.
as well as
One second,
Darby.
Steve.
Right.
It's not, that is not a debate we have to have here.
You can
The
put it on there to
personnel's come back
evaluate,
to
but it doesn't
me.
mean we're going to vote for it.
Hold
Evaluate
on,
this
go ahead.
site.
Go
If
ahead,
guys
Steve.
come back to me and evaluate it, and they say that's
I
a
don't have a-
mistake, I could hear it, I listened at Darby and
And we
Manoa,
can hug,
we're not
right?
doing it. And
Okay.
then I'll
Right.
give you a
And I'll
hug,
give
Mr. Wexler,
All
okay?
right, Steve. you have
I
the
don't
floor.
have a problem with us putting it on to evaluate, but I will agree with Bill, and the other part of it is, we have economic development that came up to this board about this whole area. I mean, there may be other things that we could do with this building, and we just don't know. I mean, don't want to rule that out, because Oakmont Business District has always been very concerned about.
Which is why all option one does, is
No, I'm
provide
saying,
renovation.
I don't mind looking
or a new
at
site.
options.
Yeah.
But I do agree that I don't know how you can put one of the busiest libraries in this intersection. It's crazy.
Correct.
But fine, we can evaluate it.
No, but I'm
Who's
saying
going
if-
to evaluate,
if-
by the way?
Okay,
Who's
I just
gonna
want to
do
make
that?
clear,
Benoni,
Who? Benoni?
Either the staff or the.
again,
but
I just want to make
agree.
clear, if
We'll get Joe
if you
Celia
pick
down
option
here.
3B, then the library can't go here because we're renovating the building
Right,
here.
option
Right.
3B is no movement of the library at all. It's renovate the library in
renovating
its
the library
existing
in-
space and renovate the township here in its existing space.
Right.
Yeah.
And to the
Correct.
extent we're discussing the value of those things, I think
Right.
both of those
You
things are a
can,
mistake.
I mean, I think
Renovating both of
Commissioner
those
McGarity
buildings
agreed
are
to, you agreed to 3 months looking at another location, but it can't be at this location.
6.
Correct.
Or 3 or 6 months, looking at another location, but not at this location.
Well, that's,
If you're going to renovate this building.
if you're going to, if you vote for
How are you
3,
gonna move the library here if you're renovating?
Not that
There's
not
no
that the
moving the library
library
on
could ever be
3B.
here. It's ridiculous.
Right.
He's only renovating on site.
It's absurd.
3B will renovate on site, or, as Bill was saying, you could give them 3 to 6 months to
find
find
another
another
location.
location. If they can't find another
not gonna
location other
construct
than
in
here.
3 months.
So 3B is, so 3B includes
Money doesn't change, it's 18 million.
moving the
Right, the money
library.
doesn't change. The $5.5 million,
you got to
3B doesn't
got to
move
get
the
a
library,
vote.
Yeah, 3B does not move the library. The only
Right.
option of possibly moving the library is option 1,
Right.
okay?
I agree. Can't be.
And option 1 commits the township building to the new site. And option 1 obviously builds the police station at the new site.
Right.
so what we have is 3B, which has been modified to move $1 million from the conference meeting center, and then adding, what, 2,000 square feet, Bill?
Yes.
Adding 2,000 square feet, or what was originally for the
Original design of the police
the re-
department.
the original design of the police station. Commissioner McGarry, you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay.
Call the vote.
All right. So we will be voting. Your choice will be option 1.
Lori has a question.
Oh, Laura!
Bring it on.
Come on, Laura!
Go ahead.
I want to be clear that I understand what the $5 million is. It's the, if you're looking at the budget.
Yes.
And you're looking at, on the second page of the budget, the conceptual budget for the library site at Darby and Mill.
Not up.
Option 2, it was $3,950,000,
What's soft cost?
including the 35% contingencies and soft costs.
Correct.
If you add those, it was $5,330,000. Are we talking about $5 million in construction plus additional 35% in, or $5 million in total? Because to me, that doesn't really
If you put,
change
million
the
total.
option.
It had 3950, and we're changing that to 5
6.
million,
5.5.
adding 500,000.
but what she's asking is, is that including the 35% soft cost?
Well, I mean, that's got to be included in every deal we do. There's got to be 35% soft costs in the 3B. Those are just there, right?
So I just want to know if the 5 million includes that 35% soft cost?
No, you'd have to add that.
That's additional.
So the additional $1,050,000 needs an additional 35% of soft costs.
So 5.5, where's my,
Okay.
And that's what where the 24.6 is?
Yeah.
24.65?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's,
That includes the soft
24.
costs.
And
So
it's
I guess
another
that adds,
150.
add another 350 in soft costs, that's your like 25,000.
We keep going up and up and up.
Well, that's just adding the contingent costs, but I don't know what the contingent costs are in 3B.
What's that?
I want to say
The
the
three, so you're adding, I'm sorry, you have to add that same amount to
but
3B.
all of the numbers are coming back
All-
here. It's like the rec
Right,
center.
so if you're saying
What
that
plan we approve?
18B just went up $500,000.
You got to add the sales tax to everything we built.
Right. So, all right.
Let me get my
Any other discussion?
calculator here.
Call the vote.
You good? Okay.
Mr. President, call the vote.
Please call roll.
Mr. D'Amelio?
3B.
Mrs. Hall?
Option 1, are we labeling that something option 1A since there's changes to it, or just option 1?
We've called it option one.
Okay,
so
option 1.
Mr. Siegel?
Option 1.
Mr. Holmes?
Option one.
Mr. McGarity?
3B.
Mr. Connell? Option 1. No selling.
I'd like to save the 5 million, option 3B.
Mr. Heilman?
1.
And Mr. Oliva?
Well, I guess it's already option 1, so
Be strong.
I'm going to say option 1. Doesn't matter.
Thank you, Mr. President.
What do you say?
I think it's a great vote.
That's the right move.
I think it's a great
absolutely the
vote.
right move. It's absolutely the right move.
We're going to hug.
Have a meeting. Wait. There we go. Can we get a, wait. Can we get a picture of it? Larry, get one too.
That'll never happen.
Franny, please, you didn't see that, hon.
Okay.
That made it worth it.
All right, gentlemen.
That was worth the extra money.
All right.
Say hi to Jeff.
I sure will.
Thanks, Glenn.
All right, I guess we have a continuation of citizens forum. Anyone? There being none, we can go to new business. Anything in new business?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
You want to go first? You want to take it in numerical order, or?
You want
Go
to?
ahead.
Anything's fine with
Commissioner
me.
Hall.
Okay. Under new business, I have 2 recommendations. I'd like to, one is for traffic safety issue. I'd like to make a request that the township look into the possibility of putting in a traffic signal preemption system at Haverford and Ardmore, that the Opticon system that the emergency vehicles have. Because if they're going to be responding, if they go up to the college off of Ardmore Avenue, they're going to be using that route 99 times out of 100, and there isn't one at that intersection.
What do you mean, Commissioner? Are you talking about the flashing light at that intersection?
There is. Well, no, the intersection, when emergency vehicles are responding to calls, intersections that have the preemption system, such an Opticom is one company that puts it out. It's the flashing strobe, and it changes the intersection, changes the light, the intersection. The light stays green for the responding unit, and it's red for everyone else.
Oh, okay.
Now, we have them here in the township already.
Right.
up
We
along
don't have
Darby
one
Road.
at Ardmore and Haverford.
Right.
And I was almost hit there last week by an emergency vehicle.
Quite frankly, you might need one. Do we have one at college? Is there one at college?
Putting one into college on
Yeah,
their plan.
yeah.
I think college has one.
No, Haverford College does not.
No, college. I mean, college
College
and
and
college and
Haverford, right.
Haverford.
I don't believe they do.
I don't think they do either.
I think there is one.
Well, they should both. They should go in both.
They should both.
places.
They should both have.
We actually will work with PennDOT.
don't think so.
PennDOT is currently working to revitalize that whole bridge area. So that'll probably be part of that for Haverford College. I could tell you from being involved with EMS in this township since '79, that those intersections are in desperate need of having that. So it's a
Okay.
great recommendation if I can give my 2 cents.
Eagle and Lawrence doesn't have one either.
Right. No.
Definitely needs it.
No, it never has.
It's supposed to be part of the,
It's supposed to be part of the
it's supposed to be
upgrade, but
part
it
of it,
never
but it hasn't been
happened.
done. It's a dangerous thing for.
What do you need?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Fire
believe,
trucks and stuff.
Lori, if I'm not mistaken, we're still waiting for PennDOT and the YMCA with those, they're working on their plan, but that,
You can still put it up.
yeah, there's, that one's still gonna go there, but I could certainly ask Deputy Chief Iola to work on that for you.
I second that motion for Chris.
And then the second one has to do with the,
Well, you want to vote on the first one?
Does that require a motion?
I don't know if it requires a vote.
I don't think it does. I think it's just the right thing to do, but
Okay. We can just
As long
instruct.
as-
Costs more than
Yeah.
10,000
Okay.
bucks.
Yeah.
I want a commitment from you guys. and I'll put it there.
You have a
after
commitment.
tonight, you have it.
Okay. The other thing is that regarding the stormwater management that we spoke about, I'd like to make a recommendation that we have a public meeting this month, as opposed to, is it this month or
October 6th.
go with October 6th? Okay.
October 6th.
Work session,
October
prior
6th.
to the October work session.
But now, at the work session, usually people cannot come up and
true.
speak.
In
So
this-
I ask
in this
that a
particular-
public forum
Yes.
be
Yeah,
instituted.
they will be able to.
At that
It's
work
significant.
session.
I think we should devote the work session to that.
Yes. We have a public hearing before it.
Yeah, work session, the
Yeah.
6th.
Okay.
So we'll devote that,
It will
work
be
session to that end.
advertised and,
yes. And we'll have public input at that work session.
okay, and that's going to be October 6th.
6th.
At 7 o'clock.
Yep, and we will have Dave Benoni here to discuss those issues.
Thank you.
Anything further? Okay, Commissioner Hall?
Mr. President, yes, I'd like to ask the Board of Commissioners to consider, after the presentation from the HPED last month, if you would consider an Economic Development Committee to be put in place within the next month if we could, so that when we approach January and we're selecting individuals to sit on these committees, that we could have an Economic Development Committee? Is that something the board would consider voting on in the next?
We don't need to have a motion for that. It's
Right.
not a statutory committee. We don't need, right. Right, there's no need.
Yeah.
It's not a statutory committee. We can just appoint that.
So we can appoint that?
I will appoint that. Okay. I will
Okay.
appoint that. We will make the committee and appoint that.
Okay. And also, I'd like to ask the Property Committee if we could, and Ordinance Committee, if we could take an opportunity to reevaluate our sign ordinance
Well, that's,
sooner rather than later.
we've been discussing that, and, it's been an issue I think has needed revision for 2 decades. So, but I believe we need a public hearing on that.
Yeah, if you go to make an amendment, you'll need a hearing, sure.
We'll need a hearing?
Yeah, but I mean,
Okay.
to reevaluate,
The
as I understand it, your ordinance committee is going to look at it first, and then when you come up with
Right.
a proposal, then you would make that,
Yeah.
you know,
My anticipation was ordinance committee review it, come
Right.
up with some suggestion.
If there was
and
ever an
But we
amendment-
still have to have a public hearing.
right,
Right.
right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
And this is,
Well, the
and I
ordinance
just want to make
committee will
one
work
thing
on that.
clear, because we are still arguing the billboard
Right.
case, is that you're talking about the ordinance as a whole, for all types of signs
Right,
throughout.
as a
the
whole.
town. Yeah.
Talking about signs primarily, on-site sign ordinance for
Right.
businesses, whether
Right.
they're,
I-
a pizza place or, the Super Fresh, that type of thing.
I understood that. I just want to make
Yeah,
sure
not
we're out
off-site,
to the world that it was.
separate advertising. That's
Right.
never been an issue,
Okay, thank you.
or at least not to me.
Anything else, Commissioner Hall?
Just have for Township Day, that's all. You can announce that.
Well, no. I'm talking
No,
about
I'm
new
good.
business.
No, new business, no, I'm fine, thank you.
Okay. I do have a piece of new business. Do you have anything, Jim?
Yeah, I do. 2 things. Number one, where do we stand on the reapportionment?
We can go
Yeah.
over
we got to talk about that. The three of us, Chris and I, and Larry have to sit down and talk
Got
about
to get
that.
this resolved soon, or it's going to be too late.
Well, I don't think we want to do it
Well, it's not
before.
too late. We don't
didn't-
have-
We didn't want to do it before the election necessarily
Yeah, we
because it's
don't
just
have
going
any,
to confuse
we don't have
people.
any commissioner elections, so, and we didn't want to screw around with the general coming up.
Yeah, but it would never take effect by the general, Larry. It would take effect next year and then maybe
Well,
the
you don't-
primary.
we don't want people thinking it does though, and that's what'll happen.
Right.
So, it'll, yeah.
We're on it. We have the maps, and the three of us have had preliminary discussions in our heads, and we're working on it.
And, but is making sure that all the commissioners
Yeah.
have an
I
opportunity
mean,
to.
everyone
Right.
should be aware, there is nothing so glaring that we're violating the law right now or have any
No, but
crazy variances that we need to match.
But you got to remember, Larry, I was here when he
Oh, I.
did all the damage, so
Yeah, but by the
that's
way,
why I
all
want
we
to be
can
able
do-
to see it
All we
right
can do
away.
is make a recommendation to the board,
Right,
so.
well, that's all we're waiting for, and then we can go from
Right.
there.
Right.
And the second thing, Mario, everybody out in the listening audience, September 27th, remember this year.
Jim, that's not new business. That's
what?
an-
That's-
That's an old business.
That's,
That's an old business. That's coming up. This is
that's
new
when you
business.
commissioner comment
Oh,
thing.
I'm
Other
sorry, okay.
business.
Yeah.
Other.
Okay.
I know it's
Actually,
been a rough night.
I should, Mario, under new business, raise one issue, and that is that that we have to immediately now start undertaking the steps to start the financing process for the construction projects we've created. So, which means our township, our finance director and our township manager should meet with our finance consultant, Mr. Walker. I'd expect us in the October meeting to be reviewing intent resolutions, and I assume that the goal would be to finance to be able to do our first round of financing before 12/31/14, yeah. To get the bank qualified financing, then we could do more financing in 15, take advantage of the rates, and be able to fund everything we talked about. So, I don't think it requires action on our part, other than to direct, other than to prepare everybody that on the next agenda will be action the board needs to take to start this process.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and just a sort of, and it's not housekeeping, but it's procedural with regard to our vote tonight. Other than the analysis of the library, we have to start moving and essentially reinstate what we were doing with the RFQs and everything. That had been handled by the property committee. And the only reason we took it out was because of the library issues. I assume we should begin again with the property committee to continue to do that, and then we bring all the votes to the board, because the board has to vote on and approve every step of the way, but someone has to vet that.
Have the RFQs been put out there already?
The RFQs were put out.
Lori should do
Yeah,
that.
Laurie does all that.
Right,
Lori.
yeah.
It should
But
be
the-
Lori.
But yeah, but it was done overseen by the property committee. We oversaw the RFQs last time, and and then we were going to present, after we got RFPs, the proposals to the board. Same, you have to have, well, the whole board could do it, but traditionally, a la what we did with the rec center at the reserve, there typically is some group that oversees, because I don't know that we need 9 of us going through
No, but what
RFQs.
did we do for the CREC?
There was a separate
There was a
committee
committee.
that Tim oversaw.
Was it a property
There was
committee?
there was
or-
a steering committee.
There was a
Steering committee.
Steering committee, and we have one for this property, which was, I was just talking to Lori, and so if you'd like the steering committee to handle that, or Lori can handle it.
It doesn't
whichever.
matter.
So,
We had a steering committee that included the property committee, and it included representative from the police department, it included codes and some others, and that was the intent, and we had already received the RFQs, the request for qualifications, and then we were going to send out requests for proposals, and then once we got that, we would then make recommendations to the board as to which,
Your committee, but who would be the overall coordinator of this committee?
Well, if it's the property committee, I chair it, but you could do a separate committee. But anything that happens, just like the rec center, has to come for this board to vote, whether it's to fund, to pick an architect, to pick everything. The board has the ultimate say, but we need to just know who's oversee how it's going to be done
I mean, I
procedurally.
would think of someone from operations, such as the assistant township manager, who's the code
She oversaw it all,
officer.
yeah.
Yeah, she
But-
oversee everything. And
But there still needs to be some steering committee, otherwise it's going to be the board as a whole, which the board can do. I just don't think that's
We have a steering committee already.
right.
Oh, can you stand up here and just explain that?
The steering committee was seated by the property committee. It included members of the property committee. There were 2 architects, a civil engineer, Tony Marcassani from the police department, and Joe Cilia from codes, and myself.
Is everybody okay that that's the steering committee and we'll be moving the process forward?
I'm fine with it.
Yeah, everybody okay?
And whatever they find
Okay.
comes to us. and then we
Everything-
vote.
Right, and then we vote on it.
We still vote.
Okay. All right. Moving on, I want to bring in front of this board in new business, last year we had the meet and greet for the HPD up at the reserve, and we'd like to do that again this October. It was very successful last time. It was a way for businesses and township officials to meet, and so we'd like to do that again this year, and we need approval from the board for that.
All in favor? Aye. Aye.
Aye.
You have a date picked, or?
No, we have to get that from Tim.
Okay.
Anybody opposed? All right, there you go. And let us start with other business. Commission. What's that?
What date was that again?
We have to get the date from Tim. We don't know what the date is. We had to get approval first and then get a date. So we'll do that. Commissioner D'Amelio.
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody that was involved in the process. I know the property committee worked hard on it. It was a very difficult decision by this board. Sometimes personal feelings get in the way of trying to do the right thing, but I want to thank First Ward residents that attended my meeting and several meetings that expressed their concerns. I hope that we met some of those concerns tonight, and thank the solicitor for trying to help us with that as well. I know that the